We, the Nisga'a Valley Health Board, have seen the seriousness of the residential school syndrome within our valley and have taken the initiative to move forward to be able to help and assist the survivors within the valley. We are putting this video together to assist everyone that has been through the residential school, to let you know that when you watch this video, the stories that you may hear may impact you in certain ways and may bring back to your recollection things that may have hurt you. I encourage you to speak to a healthcare professional in your area if you need to. Talk to a counselor, talk to a friend, to a parent, an uncle, somebody that you know you can trust and you open up to.
I wish to recall something I heard a long, long time ago. And this is a cry of our people. It's a cry of desperation. It's a cry of absolute helplessness and hopelessness when great distress comes upon our people. And they use this phrase, this cry to try and describe what it is they're feeling in their heart. Eat gundiyas al yachkaniya, ayawat willem, ayawat willem, ayawat willem kwa data de kus. That's what they said. Who's going to help us? Who's going to hear our voice? And this was the cry that our people used in ancient times to describe something that they feel deeply in their heart. I was 6 years old when I got sent away to school. I recall standing on the dock in old Inverness Cannery, one of the many, many canneries at the mouth of the Skeena River, while we waited for the steamship to come in. My mother was holding my hand, and she was also holding the hand of my brother, Benny. And we stood there on the dock waiting. There were other children there at that same time, waiting for the steamship to come in. And my mother kept repeating in this phrase, Dum sewalax nisip. That's what she said to us. Dum sewalax nisip.
I was put into residential school in 1957 in Lytton. I stayed there till 1959, which was a very difficult time for me because I was only 8 years old when I attended Lytton. And the first thing that really struck me during my time there was during the holidays when all the other students had the chance to go home and visit their families. But there was always us who was left behind. People from way up north here, the Nisga'a territory, we were always left behind because we didn't have transportation, and that was one of the hardest memories that can't leave my mind. That really struck me, knowing that there was only certain families left at the residential school, and we didn't have no celebration. We didn't celebrate Christmas. We didn't celebrate any holiday. We were just there as subjects to the government. And we didn't get no toys, nothing. We just got a brown bag with one apple, one orange, one cookie, and a handful of candy. And that was our gift.
When my grandfather, Sam Lincoln, Chief Mountain, Skanism Samagit, saw us off. He looked at us and he told us, he said that the only people that can see you leaving your territory are the blind people. The only people that can't hear you cry are the people impaired or hearing. They are the only ones, and those that sent you away.
I was totally safe. I was totally accepted for the way I was, and very gently and generously taken care of by everybody who was around me. I was very confident, and I could speak, and I was comfortable with both my mom and my dad. I can remember in the mornings that it was my dad who would get up and make our breakfast, and he would braid my hair. I had long hair. My dad would braid my hair, and when he was finished and before the oats was cooked on the kitchen wood stove, he would put 2 blocks of wood on the oven door that it was open, because we didn't have central heating in those days. And I would be on a chair like this, and my feet would be resting on the blocks of wood. I would have on my thick socks and the moccasins that my granny made, and I would sit there, my hair all nicely braided, waiting for my breakfast. I was never, ever, ever insecure. I was so taken care of. If mom and dad were at choir practice, which they were once or twice a week, my Uncle Reuben, who was my mother's brother, came and looked after me, and my baby sisters. Anyway, suddenly just everything changed.
The Indian agent said if we didn't go on a train, our parents would be taken to jail. And we didn't want our parents to go to jail. So we decided, well, we have no choice but go on a train. And we could hear our parents crying. And while the train was moving, we seen our mom collapse on the side, and we hollered and hollered, crying away. We didn't know whether she was okay, because after we were sent to Edmonton residential school.
I got on a train. I really didn't know where I was going. I mean, the place I was going to, I was told. I had never been there. And had a 3-day trip to Lytton, BC, and ended up at St. George's School, an Anglican residential school. I had no idea what the place was like. I got to the school and almost suddenly realized that it was a very regimented place. After a while it seemed like it was either a jail or an army camp or something with a lot of rules.
When I went away, all I heard was English for almost a whole year. I gilb el-loqs Willem Canry, Nisga'a nachnayam. And after we got home from school, for 2 months, all we heard was Nisga'a language.
Our first night, I remembered when we were shown where we're going to sleep on the 2nd or 3rd floor of the school, the dormitory. And the lights would go out, and sometime after the lights would go out, you could begin to hear children crying in the dormitory as loneliness set in. You're away from home, away from your loved ones, and children literally cried themselves to sleep at that time. I remember that.
1960 to 65, I was moved to Port Alberni, where that is a different situation, but the same general rules. We had to obey their rules. We could not speak our language. We could not visit our sisters because we were segregated. Even with your brothers here, there were certain places you can meet just to get away from the residential section, but that was difficult times because you try to speak your language to each other and you get caught and you get strapped anyway. And our supervisor always made a point of keeping an eye out for us. Just watch where we go, watch what we do. As soon as you speak one word in Nisga'a, then they call you right into the office and put out your hand.
Their idea was to take the Indian out of you. But they couldn't do that. They couldn't take the Indian away from us because we stuck together.
Sent such mixed messages. I remember sitting on a playroom table and I was praying, I was saying, oh, samagit realkni wastakma. Oh, samagit mommy. I was saying that, help me, I want to go home, I want to go home. And the supervisor came over and she said, she asked my cousin Loretta Clayton what I was saying, and Loretta said she's praying, she wants to go home. And that woman, I can, even as I'm talking, I can feel her finger here. She took me and she just yanked me back and forth like this, and she said, you silly girl, you, she told me. And I didn't really understand what she said, but I knew what she said wasn't good. She said, don't you know that God has so many people in the world to look after? He's not going to have time for you.
And those were the times that I remember crying all the time, just thinking of home and speaking our own language with our parents. They also hardly any food to eat. And if we do something, punished us speaking our language, we don't get to eat, which our parents never did to us. We were well fed, eating our own traditional foods. We missed that.
We were prohibited from doing a lot of things, like the girls and boys were divided and there were fences in between the two. We sit on one end of the building to eat and the girls on the other end. And in church even, we sit on, boys have their side and the girls have their side. And you were never allowed to have any contact, even with your own sisters or your family, while on the grounds. They watched that very, very closely.
Hasitskut residential school. Nidi ul hyokstit, nidi ul hyokstit at class. Some of the students who went away did not attend classes. Lakatudit I lach farm uli hatla alstit. One am school seat nidit. Some of them worked on the farm, planting potatoes. I nidi jachnilti wulachtit, and that's all they knew.
I remember one of the supervisors, I was talking Nisga'a to Benny, my brother Benny, and he heard me and he stuffed a bar of soap in my mouth. And he said, you're not supposed to speak your language, you're not. He stuffed a bar of soap in my mouth. I could still taste that soap today, 60 years later. Children were strapped on a regular basis for speaking their language. Children from many, many Aboriginal nations, from Haida-Gwaii, from Tsimshan, Gitxsan, and the local native population around Alert Bay. I think one of the harshest things that ever happened in a time like that was to be taken out of your home environment. There's no love shown in the residential school, no compassion, nobody to embrace you like what happens at home. Oh, it was a difficult time. We're doing this so that incidents of this nature should never, never happen again in our nation. We have to leave a record behind of what we went through. Agus kalksiyachkum, yuklkubet keelkum. People today often ask, why are Aboriginal people so dysfunctional? They seem completely lost in the world. Well, this is what happens when you take young children out of their home environment and place them in a totally different environment that they know nothing of. They don't know anything like what we went through.
And I was one of those people at that time who had fell into their trap, and I had lost my language. I can't speak my language anymore, but I am bringing up my own courage to get back into speaking my language. I am 60 years old now, and I still have the hard time trying to voice my opinion and speak in Nisga'a, and that makes me feel very ashamed.
I never knew I had 9 brothers until I came back. My brothers also were subject to sequester. They were in Alert Bay, Lytton, Edmonton. My sisters were in group homes. They lived the same pain that I lived.
I knew I had cousins over on the boys' side, but we were so, only if we were good could we go on the boys' side on the weekend. And we must have been just so terrible that we hardly ever got to see our cousins. And we ate in the same dining room, but we were separated from them.
I can remember we were separated from our brothers. We never see our brother until supper time, lunchtime, breakfast. Other than that, we weren't allowed to talk to them either. So we were just torn apart. We barely even remember if they were there.
Later on, after Christmas, I always remembered what my mother used to tell me, or even my grandmother, because my grandmother attended residential school in Kokalitsa, and she told me about, or all of us about, a bit of her life there. How she was glad to leave it. And my older brother died in Kokalitsa, mysteriously. I don't know exactly how that happened. But I remember my mom telling me that you don't have to accept anything or everything that anybody does to you. She used to tell me that because I used to get into trouble at the day school here. Always told me that I had a right to explain myself and that I deserve the time for you to listen to me explain. When you're doing that, even when you're doing that, you get slapped as being insubordinate or being disrespectful. And that became really hard for me. I get punished for insisting on my rights and inquiring why are my individual rights, my personal rights, not respected, because I respect you as an individual. I deserve the same. And the principal used to make an example of me as being an insubordinate person in front of everybody because I dared to say that to him and other supervisors. I got so fed up with it, I was getting discouraged in high school, that I wrote to Frank Calder when he was the MLA for Atlan. What Frank did, he sent a copy of my letter to Indian Affairs and asked them to investigate. That's when I really got the lickings, because they didn't like me going above their authority to insist or demand my right as an individual.
We survived. I'm still here. I'm 73 years old. But my experiences in the school, it seemed to be like it happened yesterday. I hear a phrase, I smell something, and instantly I'm back in that institution. Oh, a lot of our people were sexually abused, mentally abused. And this was with the blessing of the federal government. We collaborated with the different religious institutions that carried out what the government's wishes were, to make us into little white people, I guess, little white men. Well, I still hold the color of my skin. It's brown. Proud of it. I still speak my language. Nisga'a, I'm extremely proud of that. I think I was one of the fortunate few who retained the language. I had to learn the language again after I came back from school. I had my mother and my father taught me all over again how to speak. And perhaps they knew what we were going through. Maybe, I'm sure they saw the changes in the children that came back, and periodically on the dinner table they would say, "Gilazamisum tacht ago Wilson. Gilazamisum tacht ago Wilson." Said, "Don't ever forget what you went through." That's what they said. They said it to me. Gilazamisum tacht. Don't forget it. And so here I am in 2010, still alive and well, but like the old Nisga'a cry of Iowa Willagwa, who's going to hear us? Who's going to hear our voice? Who's going to help us? I know on this healing journey we're on, we're going to have to heal ourselves. I don't think we should allow past experiences to hijack our future. That's what's going to happen. Our future is going to be hijacked by what we experienced in the past. We're not going to forget that. We have to leave that behind sometimes, as difficult as it may be. But we have to do that. We have to do that and move on. My father used to say to me when we were on hunting grounds and trapping, you walk the same, don't slow down, don't look back, he said. I remember those things, gave guidance to my life. I wasn't going to allow my residential school experiences to guide my life in the future. I wasn't prepared to do that. But I was also prepared not to forget that experience. Oh, what it meant. A heartbreaking experience. A life-changing experience that disrupted the lives of many, many Aboriginal people all across Canada. And they too have a story to tell. They have a story to tell of what they went through, what they experienced. Like the old saying says, who's going to hear us? Who's going to listen to my voice? I'm pleased to have had this opportunity, brief as it may be, to describe briefly what a 6-year experience in the residential school meant and what it did to me as a person. And I hope in the foreseeable future, those children that are yet to be born never go through an experience such as what we went through. We went through that. I'm sure future leaders coming up behind us will do even greater things for our people. And I say to those people, Sam Wilson, the old Nisga'a words of encouragement. Sam Wilson. Gilazagulski asks him, Diat al yacht one gigat. Gilazagulski asks him, Kanit niltamulat awesome. Kanit niltamulat awesome. Thank you.
There are times when I feel very proud to be a Nisga'a, seeing every one of us out there getting together, doing our cultural dancing and singing and doing our certain things that our grandfathers had passed on to some people, and some of the people kindly bring that forward, and we're starting to relive our grandparents' ways of life. For instance, we do the canoe journey, which is one of the best things that ever happened to me when I heard about that, because I love the water and I love canoeing and I love teaching the young people about how to steer a canoe, how to paddle on a canoe. Don't be too tense because you never know what'll happen, but nevertheless the love is out there, your crew is out there, and we all stick together as one. And that was very difficult for me at that time because I was one of those people who had to take direction. Someone had to tell me what to do before I did it. Now I am trying to bring that leadership within me out so that I can teach the younger people the ways of our grandfathers. And on every journey that we've attended so far, I've learned a lot because we travel to different nations, different villages, and we stay out there maybe a whole week to 10 days. 2 young men came up to me and told me, said, John, we need you, we need your help. I said, oh, what can I do for you? He said, we need you drumming, we need your singing. I said, oh. I said, I don't know how to do that. And they said, come with us, we'll teach you. So reluctantly I went along with him, and from that day on, the culture part just took over. Now I'm very proud to be a Nisga'a. I'm very proud to sing songs and understand the songs that we're singing. And that's what I want to do to these young people too. I want to help them realize that being Nisga'a with your family here, with everything that we have here, it's a gold mine for young people to get into. We've done our men's choir, which is another tool for me to understand my language. We do have a men's choir here that is very successful. And thanks to all my other brothers and sisters here in the valley, they've helped me out teaching me these words. I just ask them, well, how do you say this word? And they tell me.
I am really fortunate that I have a rich nation who care about everything that we've done. I worked hard for myself. I became a Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I played soccer with the national team, the police team, and as a member of the E Division counter-terrorist group, as a special constable for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Because I worked, I believe there was nothing ever going to stop me. There is no real medicine that can take that pain away, except we have to go back to our culture. Like you children today, go back to your culture, learn how to dance, speak. You're Nisga'a, you're proud people, you're rich people. Absorb, take as much as you can. Let nobody tell you different. You have the opportunity to be leaders today. Our ancestors bequeathed this land to us. It's for you and your children, to look after, to respect, to commute with. This is your home. Believe in your cultural, your tradition, your lifestyle.
A great many of us have made contributions to our people in meaningful ways, and so I was able to do a little bit to help our people.
And this stayed with me for a long, long time, that the things that happened in residential school. I vowed that I will turn it around and give my best to do for families. When I started having my children, I used to give them hugs and say, I love you. And as they were growing up, I still say the same thing. I love you. All the time we were in residential school, we didn't hear that. I love you. For the longest time that the journey that I'm on now are healthy. Forgiveness was the first one I had in mind, to forgive what had happened to us, so I can see the future of my own children, my grandchildren, and the young people especially. I belong to Eagle tribe, so I always get my strength when I see the eagles flying around free. And this is what I put in my mind when I go perform. I think of the strength the eagle gives us. I think of the strength of all the tribes. So this is what my teaching to my family. I did their regalias, every single one of them have a regalia was made by me, and I tell them that this is what our grandparents would have loved to see us use the regalias.
It was good to get to know other people from other places, like the First Nations people from the Fraser Canyon, or places like Merritt, Kamloops, Lillooet, Boston Bar, and other places like Kitkatla and Port Simpson, all the kids that went to school there, and became friends, because we grew up friends and remain friends today. It's the only way you can survive in an institution like that, is to say, well, it's been a bad day, but it's only one day. And a lot of emotions come to you. You want to cry, you're angry, you want to get even. But you learn through developing your own patterns. Each day you get by it. And then you get to that place where you say, nothing's going to bother me today. Nothing is going to bother me today. I'm going to get through this day, whether you hit me 18 times or 38 times. That's the frame of mind you're in most of the time. That's how I survived anyway. Now I look at it, and I wasted so much time being angry. Whatever I have left, I gotta find a way to be satisfied and be happy with whatever I'm doing. And I find that in my grandkids, I always tell them, I will never let anybody do to you what they did to me. I will never let them do that to you. And I will help you as much as I can to do whatever you want to do. Be whatever you want to be. That's what really keeps me alive today.
Kanwil sa aml wilsa kalam qsit. Ikil agul di willy. There's one thing I always do. Kaldil kandidils dem a'laqay adigol yuk dem linhi agul wal qaltiyaqui. Life is too short, I say, to be always angry about what went on in my life. Nakanwil kiginaqui. Hiluk kanlaq biginaqui. Lepulkslamot ni. That's why I pray in the morning and at night to help myself with whatever I went through. And there's one affirmation that I always say 3 times a day if I have to. I say, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Ka nitks lagul ta'aqwi, will klamom ilsum ogit laha, and sidachgyadi. Tcha nitxlegulta aqlgui, wiltlumami sim ogidlacha, and wiltachgyadi.
I stand before you today to offer an apology to former students of Indian residential schools. The treatment of children in Indian residential schools is a sad chapter in our history. Two primary objectives of the residential school system were to remove and isolate children from the influence of their home, families, traditions, and cultures, and to assimilate them into the dominant culture. These objectives were based on the assumption that Aboriginal cultures and spiritual beliefs were inferior and unequal. Indeed, some sought, as was infamously said, to kill the Indian in the child. Today we recognize that this policy of assimilation was wrong, has caused great harm, and has no place in our country. The Government of Canada built an educational system in which very young children were often forcibly removed from their homes, often taken far from their communities. Many were inadequately fed, clothed, and housed. All were deprived of the care and nurturing of their parents, grandparents, and communities. First Nations, Inuit, and Métis languages and cultural practices were prohibited in these schools. Tragically, some of these children died while attending residential schools, and others never returned home. The government now recognizes that the consequences of the Indian residential schools policy were profoundly negative, and that this policy has had a lasting and damaging impact on Aboriginal culture, heritage, and language. While some former students have spoken positively about their experiences at residential schools, these stories are far overshadowed by tragic accounts of the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse and neglect of helpless children and their separation from powerless families and communities. It has taken extraordinary courage for the thousands of survivors that have come forward to speak publicly about the abuse they suffered. It is a testament to their resilience as individuals and to the strengths of their cultures. Regrettably, many former students are not with us today, and died never having received a full apology from the Government of Canada. Therefore, on behalf of the Government of Canada and all Canadians, I stand before you in this chamber so vital, so central to our existence as a country, to apologize to Aboriginal peoples for the role the Government of Canada played in the Indian residential schools system. To the approximately 80,000 living former students and all family members and communities, the Government of Canada now recognizes that it was wrong to forcibly remove children from their homes, and we apologize for having done this. We now recognize that it was wrong to separate children from rich and vibrant cultures and traditions, that it created a void in many lives and communities, and we apologize for having done this. We now recognize that in separating children from their families, we undermine the ability of many to adequately parent their own children and sow the seeds for generations to follow. And we apologize for having done this. We now recognize that far too often, these institutions gave rise to abuse or neglect and were inadequately controlled. And we apologize for failing to protect you. Not only did you suffer these abuses as children, but as you became parents, you were powerless to protect your own children from suffering the same experience. And for this, we are sorry. The burden of this experience is properly ours as a government and as a country. There is no place in Canada for the attitudes that inspired the Indian residential school system to ever prevail again. You have been working on recovering from this experience for a long time. And in a very real sense, we are now joining you on this journey. The Government of Canada sincerely apologizes and asks the forgiveness of the Aboriginal peoples of this country for failing them so profoundly.
The song is called Creator. Listen to the words to the song. It's a beautiful song. Oh, Creator, oh, Creator, riding morning star, riding morning star. Oh, I ask you, oh, I ask you to break this praise, touch my mind, touch my mind, heal my broken heart, heal my broken heart. Oh, Creator, oh, Creator, touch my soul, touch my soul. Help me stay, help me stay. This lasting evil day, this lasting evil day. Help me stay, help me stay. I'm strong and mighty warrior, I'm strong.